I'm used to using the program because we have to use it for teaching right now. So
Oh, I see. So how's it going?
things are good. It's going okay.
Yeah?
How are things on your end?
Good, good. Okay, so I just started a live channel. Okay, nice. So there are some people who just joined. Thank you so much for joining. Here is Julian.
Hello.
Yeah. So he used to be my student in Canada and he moved to South Korea many years ago. How many years was
Uh,
that?
I wouldn't say many years ago. It was like it was over 3 years now. It's been over 3 years.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's good. Wow. But already,
yeah,
right?
already 3 years. It's crazy.
So did you plan to stay there for 3 years or more, or did you plan like 1 year or something?
Well, my original plan, well, 3 years ago, my original plan is I really wanted to come to South Korea, and so of course, naturally, I was going to be here for 1 year, but then I really liked it, and so I stuck around and kept staying longer and longer. And uh, in actuality, my real goal is I didn't really want to leave until I become fully fluent. So
So would you say
in the
that you're
language.
getting there, being fluent?
I've improved. Slowly getting closer to my goal. Um, and actually, what's nice is I'm going to be starting official classes in May. Actual, proper Korean classes,
Oh, so you
sponsored
haven't
by the
taken
government.
that at all in South Korea since you moved there?
Not yet. I haven't taken any classes since I've been here. I've been basically too busy working because I've been working full time. And the hours didn't really mix well with the classes. I've been doing a lot of self-teaching, self-studying, like on my own. Like I bought books, and I've met friends and met people who have helped me improve and helped me study. I've done that, so a lot of self-study, but actual classes not yet because I just the timing didn't kind of match or mesh well.
Oh, I
So
see.
now, but now it's different. So now I'm going to have time because my job hours have changed. Now I have the time to actually start taking classes.
Okay. So what kind of job hours do you have currently?
Well, right now I mostly work in the afternoon. So I work after I have afternoon hours, whereas before it was kind of full day. So like morning, like typical to back home, like almost 9 to 6. So, but now I work pretty much the same thing, but in the afternoon. So that leaves me now the mornings open, and those courses that I wanted to take were usually always in the morning.
Oh,
So
okay. So you're in Hagwon, just to give context to viewers. So
yes, that's
Hagwon
right.
is some kind of academy school where students go after their regular schools, right?
Hmm.
So you usually starts in the evening.
It depends. There's different kinds of hagwons. Mine in particular actually is a kindergarten and elementary school hagwon. So the kindergarten is usually until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then from about 2:30 till 7 is when we have the elementary students come in.
Oh, I see.
And yeah, so our current hagwon teaches for elementary school. We teach. Uh, Basically first grade elementary all the way until fourth grade elementary.
So
Um,
kindergarten, elementary school, and then it goes up. So whoever comes
that's right.
later is older.
That basically it's the way it goes. In the first Hagwon I worked at, those hours were from 2 till 10 o'clock, and that went up to I think it was third grade middle school. So I had middle schoolers come in, and they were at late o'clock, like 7 o'clock is when they came in, and then there were adult classes in the evening. So.
Oh, wow. So you probably teach like full range of ages.
Pretty much, yeah. The only range of students I haven't taught are high school. So I've
Okay.
done elementary, I've done middle school, and I've taught adults and kindergarten students. Just I haven't actually taught high school students yet.
Oh, I see. Wow. So, okay, going back to before you left Canada. So you're from Ottawa, the capital of Canada, and
That's right.
you're born there and raised up there, right?
No, I wasn't born in Ottawa. That was just the city I was most recently living in before leaving.
Okay.
I've actually lived in 3 different cities growing up. So,
In Canada.
in Canada, yeah. All, of course, in Canada, yeah.
Okay. So you decided to move to South Korea, but what got you even into Korean culture? Why?
So it was a combination of a couple different things. So for one, for me, I've always been a major gamer. And so I like playing lots of video games.
Mm-hmm.
And I was slowly getting more interested in the esports scene, so the competitive gaming side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when I started to play the game StarCraft, which was really, really popular in Korea,
Yeah.
where I started to get exposed to Korean culture. So I would watch professional players streaming their games from Korea, and a lot of times when they're streaming, they'd be listening to like K-pop and that kind of music as they're playing. So that kind of was my first exposure to Korean culture, and to the way to South Korea essentially. And then after that, I decided to kind of broaden my perspective, and that's when I discovered on Netflix there's a whole category of Korean dramas and Korean movies. So I was like, oh, this seems interesting. So let's have a look there. So that's when I started. That was when my interest of dramas and Korean movies started, and then from there that kickstarted everything else. That's when I really wanted to start learning more about the culture, the history. That's when I started actually teaching myself the language, and pretty much now I'm here.
Wow. So I didn't know 3 years ago Netflix already had a Korean genre section.
Actually, even further back than that, because I started, I'm trying to remember now, because all the years have coalesced into one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2014 or 2015, in and around there, when I started watching my first couple dramas that were on Netflix. And then from there, I started, because there was only a few on Netflix, I started searching other places, started searching online for more and more dramas, and that kind of got me hooked on dramas.
So, I mean, we were having lessons twice a week, pretty much every week, and you wanted to learn Korean so bad. Even when we cannot make it to lesson, you're like, give me some homework. I gotta do something, right? I still remember that. So we're doing that, I think, for 2 years, right? About 2 years. I looked it up in our, old emails. And what proficiency of your Korean when you left to move to Korea?
When I left, I would say probably in between beginner intermediate is where I would say I put myself, was where I was at. So in between, not necessarily all the way at intermediate, but more than a beginner. So I knew enough that I could basically have very simple conversations and do simple things when I left.
So is that what you're thinking even when you're in Canada? I'm kind of upper beginner, lower intermediate, or now that you're looking back, oh, I was not actually advanced or upper intermediate. It was actually a beginner.
Well, when I look back now, yes, I see myself as a little bit of a lower level than maybe what I saw myself 3 years ago leaving Canada from. I thought I was pretty good leaving from Canada, but it wasn't until I got here where I realized, wow, okay, I think I've overestimated a little bit my ability.
But since you're so submerged into Korean culture, you're also learning Taekwondo, you made your time to learn as much Korean culture as possible, right? Before you getting there. But did you still have culture shock that you didn't expect?
Not really, because I had spent honestly, I was. That's what shocked me the most was that I didn't really feel culture shock all that much.
That's the culture shock.
Well, I didn't really. Well, I mean, in a way, yeah, but not as much as I thought I would, and that's mostly because I knew. And granted, you shouldn't take your expectations of reality from TV shows. But that said, there was a lot of similarities between what I would see in dramas and because I also did some research and what I was reading about to actual daily life here. And so I saw a lot of that already, and I was exposed to a lot of this stuff already, even before coming. So I kind of knew what to expect, and so because of that, I settled in pretty quickly. And basically the things that I didn't know were naturally what I didn't see in dramas. Like one of the biggest things for me, one of the biggest shocks was like say you go to a cafe, and so there's cafes everywhere. You can walk, no different than how in Canada there's Tim Hortons everywhere. Here it's just cafes, but it's different brands. But kind of what shocked me the most is in cafes, everyone's, people there studying, they're hanging out with friends and that kind of thing. But if they need to go to the bathroom, they just leave all their personal belongings on the table. They don't even ask anyone to watch it. They just walk away, go to the bathroom, and then come back. And when I first saw that, I was looking around. I'm like, is anyone watching that? Like, is someone not going to steal that? But here, it's just not a thing. Nobody steals anything. Like, that's unattended. Like in a public place, like in a cafe. Whereas if you do that in Canada, guaranteed something will go missing.
Oh yeah, for sure. I remember you saying this story when I met you in South Korea back in like 2 years ago, or
it was about. I think it was like almost Chuseok. I think Chuseok 2 years ago.
Okay.
Around Chuseok.
We met in a cafe and you told me exactly the same story. Like, look at around, there are people leaving laptops and cell phones. Like, they leave literally everything, and nobody touches other people's belongings, right?
Exactly. They just leave them alone because there's this kind of understanding. And of course, there's other. It's just part of the culture. Here, you don't do that thing, and everybody understands that.
So, would you comfortable leaving your phone on the table now?
Now, yes. When I first came here, no, absolutely not. I would, if I had to leave my table, I would take everything with me. But now it's completely different. Now, I'm comfortable leaving my things behind because I know they're not going to go missing.
Wow, that's pretty good about South Korean.
Yeah.
So you say you watched dramas, that's why you didn't have as much culture shock. So did you have a moment that, oh my god, I actually saw that in drama, I'm actually experiencing it? Like, what is one thing that you remember?
So I've acted. Okay, well, the what you see a lot of times in especially in romance dramas is when you have people that go, usually like a guy and a girl, they go out drinking together, and then they end up, usually the boy ends up giving the girl a piggyback out of the bar. Well, I've seen that.
What do you mean
For
by
sure.
that? Can you elaborate what it was mean by piggyback? Like on the back, literally?
Yeah, like you'll see them like carrying someone on their like usually the girl on their back, carrying them either to the home or carrying them somewhere.
I see.
I've actually seen that coming out of bars or coming out of like a sujit. So
Yeah. I've done it too. So it is real, guys.
and I've given piggybacks myself too.
Oh, okay, there you go.
So it is real. That is an actual thing that does happen.
So does that mean you still have time to go out and drinking after teaching long hours of teaching?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially because that was one of the other big shocks was that a lot of drinking places here. So as we know, back home in Ottawa, everything by 2 a.m. everything's closed, right? Last call like 1:50, 2 o'clock, everything's done. No, not here. Like 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning is when everything closes down. So you can go drinking. People go drinking all night.
So when the bar is closing, when everything else is starting to open, right? Pretty much the
Pretty
whole
much,
day,
yeah.
everything is pretty much open.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was the other kind of crazy one of the big shocks I noticed was that because I remember when I first got here, when my friend, it was we had went out, it was after a night of teaching, and we went out drinking, or we went out to eat dinner, and we had drinks at dinner. So at this point, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and she's like, "Why don't we go out to the bar and drink, or why don't we go out and do this?" And then I said, "Well, isn't it a little bit late? Like, aren't things going to be closing?" Because I'm thinking back home, well, everything is closed by 2 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they're like, "Oh, no, don't you know?
Don't you know?
Things here don't close early. They stay open very late." So it's like, "Oh, okay."
So have you
So,
tried
yeah, sure,
Jimjibang then?
Actually, that's the one place I haven't been to yet. I
Oh.
haven't been to a Jinjibang yet. I've been here 3 years and I've yet to go to a Jinjibang.
Wow.
Or, yeah.
That's on
So
your bucket list, right?
It's on the list. It's on my list of things to do, yes.
How about
For sure.
sauna? Like, because Korean people are big on like removing their dead skins and things like that. Are you comfortable going in there and being naked with a bunch of men and just rub your dead skins?
I mean, I've thought about it. Again, I still haven't been to a sauna yet. I think I'd be ready to go, but I would need to probably lose more weight before I'd feel comfortable.
That's one thing that's pretty hard, right?
It can be, yeah, sometimes. So, but no, seriously, I still on my list of things to do is to actually go to a sauna as well and do that. I mean, I'd be comfortable. Yeah, I'd be okay with it, I think. So.
Okay. So now when you go around, you don't need like anyone. You really feel comfortable communicating with Korean, like local Korean
Yes.
people.
Oh, yes. No, for sure.
Okay. So what was the first experience when you landed to South Korea and you had to communicate with somebody, right? So do you remember the first time you kind of stumbled upon talking to the local person?
Well, actually, I was very fortunate when I first arrived. At that time, my Hagwon director had come to the airport to pick me up and drove me home. And of course, he spoke English, so I didn't actually have to use Korean at all. So it wasn't until like the first couple of days, like for instance, when I had to go get something to eat for the first time by myself, where I was forced to have to use my Korean, and even so, at the restaurant, or I think it was just at a small kimbap place. She was very surprised that I was able to order and speak the way I was. So she's like, "Whoa!" Kind of like she was shocked. So
And
she
then
wasn't expecting it.
and then that's the thing. If you know like one fluent sentence, and they think that you're so fluent that they're just gonna talk back to you.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
Okay. So were you nervous talking to Korean people initially in the beginning?
Yeah, and to a degree, I still am a little bit nervous. And though my Korean has improved quite a bit, it depends on the topic of discussion, where I can either speak comfortably or sometimes I might not know certain words or certain vocabs. So it depends on the topic, but I can more or less like a lot of like going to a restaurant, going to a taxi, knowing how to like asking where to go, asking for directions, and all that kind of thing. I can do comfortably. That's no problem.
Oh.
It's more when you get into like more kind of more advanced discussions, like things about like the economy or things like higher level work terms, government terms, politics, that kind of thing. That's where it's really, really difficult still.
But I think one of the followers, CMIEDI, left a question for you. And the person is based on the assumption that you don't think when you speak Korean, you don't translate in your head. So the person said, how did you start to think in Korean rather than translate? Is that what's happening?
I think I actually can do that, but also what helps with that is because Korean is actually my third language. So because I'm fluent in two other languages already, English and French, with Korean, I know how to be able to start thinking in a way in that language. Honestly, that it's just time. Time is the biggest thing. Most of the time, what's going to happen is you will spend time trying to translate in your head first, and then before being able to, basically you'll translate in your native language to Korean, and then you'll speak it in Korean. And then the same thing, when they speak Korean to you, you'll probably likely translate it back into your native language, and then to be able to process and think about it. That's just naturally the way the brain works with languages, and essentially it's just time. Time is the most important thing. Time and practice, and eventually the more you do it, the faster you become at doing it, and then eventually you can end up pretty much start thinking about it.
So time is very important, but at the same time, let's say, for example, you haven't left to South Korea, you've been studying just in Canada, doing all the lessons with me. Would you have improved Korean as much as you have now?
No.
Yeah.
Not nearly as much, because the other important thing too is immersion.
Yeah.
So, even if I would have studied 7 days a week with you back home in Canada, it wouldn't be nearly the same as having spent the time here.
Yeah.
I often joke that I learned here more in 1 month than I had over the course of a full year back home. And that's just because here you're exposed to Korean everywhere. If you so when you look around, you see it, you hear it, and as well as speak it. So it's full immersion here.
Yeah.
Whereas back home, there's only so much exposure you can get. Watching dramas, listening to music, taking lessons, practicing. Whereas here, you're forced in the situation. So naturally, full immersion will get you learning faster, and will get you thinking faster as well.
Yeah. So I 100% agree with you. Like Julien said, time is important, but you have to be immersed with the situation. So those of you who are on live, you guys can ask any questions if you have. So let's get through my questions in between. So what are the things that you wish you knew about South Korea before you got there?
So that's a very, very good question. I can't think. I'm not sure how I can answer that one. I wish I knew that even beforehand. Just how much of a drinking culture it really is. So, I knew, because that might make people feel uncomfortable as well. Because I knew beforehand that people drink here a lot. But the other thing too is that depending on the job you might have or your coworkers, they will take you out drinking. And usually like an after work gathering called KSTYLEYO, where you basically go out and you have dinner and you drink, but it doesn't stop there. You usually go to like 3 or 4 different places afterwards, and like usually by the end of it, people are like really, really, really drunk. And sometimes there's some pressure from your higher ups to drink. So that's it. So that's a good thing to know. So if you're okay with drinking, then that's great, and just expect that there's that possibility. If you don't usually drink, they become a lot more accepting over the day, especially if you're a foreigner. They're usually a little bit more accepting of that. But if you say you don't drink, then they'll go, okay, they won't usually force it upon you. So.
But if they know you drink and you kind of back out, it's like they see you as antisocial and kind of like exclude from their circle, right? I know
Yes.
exactly what you mean. So Nikki asked, when do you recommend to go take the TOEIC? Which level? That's what she's asking.
So TOEIC it's a great question and great that you mentioned TOEIC. TOEIC has changed a lot over the last little while. About 2 or 3, like I was studying for TOEIC. That was one of the biggest thing I was studying for. And before there was only 2 tests per year. So I think it was like there was one in the spring and one in the fall, but that's completely changed now. And because there's so much interest in taking TOEIC, the government has made a lot more testing sessions.
Okay.
And so you can basically go take it whenever you'd like, when you feel comfortable. The TOEIC test is actually a good way to test where your current level is. So whenever you feel like you're ready, you can go and take it, and then it'll kind of give you an actual idea. Because it's one thing to think, oh yeah, I'm this level, or I'm this good, and I don't need to take the test. Versus, okay, maybe I should check to see where my actual level is and take the test. It's not too expensive either to take. So
how much would you say?
I think it's like 3만 won. I think like basically the equivalent of about $30 to $40 to take the test. So that was when I last checked. I'm not sure if prices have changed, but it's a good way to check, because you can also take it again. Essentially, I think you have to wait a period of 30 or 60 days before you can take it again, or even 90 days. But even so you take the test, you get an idea what level you're at, and then you get your results. Okay, so I'm this level, so now I know I need to study more, study harder. So you go back to studying, and then maybe 4 months later, you can take it again and kind of see your improvement that way.
One thing I can recommend to you guys, take test before you go to South Korea, and take another one immediately when you're there in South Korea, and after come back. That's what I did with TOEIC. That is the proficiency test for English. I was always taking TOEIC tests, and I couldn't go beyond like 650. It was always like just below 700, right? And when I lived in Canada just 1 month for traveling and went back to South Korea, I took TOEIC tests immediately because I wanted to have the English mindset fresh in my head, right? I literally jumped my TOEIC score like 150 points, like literally like that. So it's a good way to check how much you can even improve by staying in South Korea, even if it's like 2 weeks. I know 2 weeks is kind of short, but 1 month or 2 months, however long you want to stay in South Korea, it's kind of good way to check where you are and where you are now too. So this is one of my questions. You mentioned the kind of advantage as a foreigner about drinking culture, because they see you as a foreigner. Okay, you get the foreigner card. That's what they say, foreigner card. So what are the advantages, like other advantages and perhaps disadvantages living in South Korea as a foreigner?
So advantages are, well, once you have your foreigner card, it's essentially similar to having like the regular Korean citizens having their own citizen card. Like you have your own ID number just like them. So there's a lot of things you can do. So essentially it becomes your ID, your photo ID. So you can pretty much do anything once you have that card.
Actually, Julian, when I meant by foreigner card, it's figurative speech. It's like, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Anyways. Sorry. Yeah. Well, disadvantages is, now this doesn't happen often, but there are some places where they will not let you in if you're a foreigner.
Oh, like where?
Like there was, for example, there was a club like a nightclub, a dance club, where they wouldn't let foreigners in. It was only for Koreans.
Oh wow.
So
was it in
that was-
Daegu?
No, in
Ulsan.
Ulsan. That's where I live now.
Just
Now-
to give you context, Julian lives in Ulsan, where it is, let's say, maybe 2-3 hours away from Seoul. Depends on what you're doing, right?
It's about 2 hours by KTX, which is the high-speed train, or it's like a 5-hour bus. So, depending on, but the fastest way is by the KTX, the high-speed train. Yeah.
So people who live in Ulsan speak dialect. Just let you know. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
So, but it actually depends where in the country you are. So in Seoul, there's not very many disadvantages to being a foreigner, because in Seoul, there's lots and lots of foreigners. And so actually Seoul is more better catered to foreigners than other cities. Busan is also, because Busan's also a big city, it's also good for foreigners. But usually the smaller the city that gets, it can be a little bit uncomfortable. For example, for when I was here in Ulsan for like the first, well, even still now sometimes, but it was very noticeable in the first 6 months. Just walking down the street, you see a lot of Koreans honestly just look and stare at you. And then as you're
Directly,
walking
right?
down, pretty much just stare at you directly, and then like they'll keep walking down along their way. So it's it's a little bit weird to get used to, but you eventually get used to it. So I mean that can be kind of considered like one disadvantage. Sometimes just the language barrier, depending on how proficient you are in Korean, and also depends where you are. In Seoul, they mostly all speak Seoul dialect, so it's relatively easy to understand, because
So we don't call it dialect though. It is a standard Korean language. Yeah.
Korean standard. My apologies. Yes. So basically, everything that you hear in movies, mostly here in movies and in dramas, unless that character is speaking with a particular different dialect or a different accent, then but some places are a little harder to understand than others. Like Ulsan sometimes can be a little bit difficult. Busan as well. And so sometimes trying to understand, even though you understand Korean, like there's times where I've taken a taxi, and the taxi driver, his dialect, like his accent was like so thick, I couldn't understand what he was saying at all. And so I'd be constantly asking him to repeat, or it got to the point where I would just be like smiling and nodding, like yes.
And you don't
Because it
understand.
was
That's dangerous.
because
He
I
may just kidnap
because
you.
I couldn't understand. So be prepared. So depending on where you are around the country, there's different accents, different dialects, and sometimes it could be, as a foreigner, a little bit difficult to understand. And then also, very rare, but you will have some older Koreans who they might just say like bad things.
They just don't like foreigners, right?
They just don't like foreigners, and like they'll let you know about it. They're not afraid to let you know about it.
Just beware, guys. Don't be afraid.
It doesn't happen often, and again, it depends where you are. But it's just keep that in the back of your head that it is a possibility.
What happened to you? Like, did somebody yell at you or something?
It's not that they yelled at me. It's just like they looked at me like they gave me like a dirty look, and like we're just muttering under their breath like,
Foreign. Obviously, they don't say it in English, but you can tell for sure, right?
Oh yeah, no,
That happened to my husband at that time, boyfriend. Yeah, that happened. I mean, I understood everything, right? You know, like if you're foreigner, you should be speaking Korean. They actually don't like you guys speak English when you're there. They want to see you speaking Korean, so especially traditional older Korean. They're gonna hate it.
Yeah.
Like when they hear English, you better speak Korean when you're living in South Korea. So one of the questions from Karida. What was the hardest part about learning the language, and how did you manage it?
Well, the hardest part, and I mean, even still now, is probably the grammar and the sentence structure. So the easiest part, the easiest part is actually just the alphabet, Hangul. That's like the easiest to wrap your head around. But the hardest is sometimes some of the grammar. Some of the grammar can get really confusing, as well as the sentence structure. Since so growing, like those of us who have learned like either English growing up or French growing up, or basically any Romance European language, where it goes the sentence structure is subject, verb, object. When you suddenly introduce to a language like Korean, where it's subject, object, verb, you end the sentence with a verb. It becomes really like you really start turning circles in your head. It's like, oh, how do I? Okay, what's the order of the words I put in? Is it like this, this? No, it has to be like that. That's probably the hardest thing, is wrapping your head around getting the correct sentence structure, like the correct sentence placed together. And I sometimes still struggle with it, but I've gotten a lot better with it. So.
Oh yeah. Can you show us a few examples of Korean phrases? Because people wonder, is he even good? Like, we haven't heard him speaking Korean.
Well, what kind of phrases? Like.
몰라요. 그러면 maybe you can tell us about one of the funny stories in Korean and in English when you encountered as a language barrier. It's kind of difficult. That's a difficult one.
Like, do you want me to say my story in Korean, you mean? Or say it in English?
Yeah. Just few phrases.
Okay, let me see. See, now I have to try and organize the sentences in my head. You're putting me on the spot here.
Yeah, that was a question from Karida. What was any funny situation because of language barrier?
Actually, no, I do have a funny, I have a funny, not because of language barrier, but I do have a funny situation where people thought I didn't understand.
Oh, but you understood.
But I understood, yes.
That's funny.
So I was coming one night. It was a summer. It was the early summer. I was riding the bus back. I was running the bus back home, and sitting in beside me, or so not beside me, but sitting behind me was a group of high school girls. And so I'm just sitting there minding my own business, and I could hear I could just kind of feel that the girls were paying a little bit more closer attention to me. And I could hear them speaking amongst themselves. They're looking, 이 외국인 진짜 잘 생겼어요.
Oh my God.
잘생겼다. 너무 귀여워. And because at the time I'm looking at my phone too, and I was speaking to my girlfriend at the time, and she's Korean, and I was speaking, and she's like, we were speaking in Korean on the phone. But she said something on the phone. She said something in Kakao that I couldn't understand. Like, there's words I couldn't understand, so I was copying it and putting it into my translator. And so they saw this, like, 귀여워, 번역이 사용하고 있어요 지금. 너무 귀여워. So I'm hearing all of this, and I'm like, okay. And so I start chuckling to myself. They still at this point do not know that I understand what they're talking about. So I get to my bus stop, and I start off. I get off, and I get up, and I go to stand at the door to get ready to turn off. And then I looked at them, and then I said, 안녕하세요. 다 잘 이해했습니다. 감사합니다. 너무 감사합니다. And they all just were like, 어머, 어떡해. Almost like they're all so shocked and flustered. It was really funny. Because I understood everything. I told them I basically told them I understood everything that they were talking about.
Wow. So now they learn hard lesson. They're gonna be kind of, watch out against foreigners.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty good. And actually, one another question. Janet Bartlett asked, "Can we ask about food?
Sure.
What are the best foods that you like, and what food you wouldn't want to try?"
So there's a lot of Korean foods that I like. Gamjatang, like all the jjigae, kimchi jjigae, chamchi jjigae, doenjang jjigae. So I love jjigae. Kimbap also delicious. But so many different kinds of Korean foods. Tonkatsu, tteokbokki, all of it. Like I love it all. It's really, really good. Things and I've tried a lot of different things, including a lot of seafood. I live in Ulsan, so we're right next to the sea, so you can get lots of different fresh seafood here. So lots of delicious seafood. Things I wouldn't recommend trying. I've heard a lot about this. I haven't tried it yet. I'd be tempted, but people keep telling me no, don't do it. I forget the Korean name for it, but the fermented crab. I think it's the
you mean like the raw crab, right?
I think it's like a raw crab that's fermented in like in like soy sauce or soy sauce. It's apparently
so
like
good.
apparently it smells really, really bad.
I mean, it smells like fish. You know, it's raw, right? It's jelly inside, so good.
So.
I missed it.
I'm not sure, but yeah. So I haven't tried that yet. I'm not sure I'd recommend it. There's very few things I don't like, and I can't think of things I don't like right now.
Have you tried bandegi? That's the lava, butterfly lava.
Oh, yes, I have not tried that, and I don't think I will, and I wouldn't recommend that.
Try just one. At least you say you tried it.
I suppose, yeah, but maybe.
I was a kid, I was born in Incheon. We also by the sea, right? Sea was not far away, but you still need to drive. But anyway, every time you get to the shore, they sell you bandegi. Bandegi is like the butterfly lava. It's like in cocoon or something before it turns into butterfly. And they give you a scoop of bandegi in a cup. And I grew up eating it without realizing it was lava. And one time, somebody told me a story that they found the butterfly wings, like partially.
Wow.
And then I realized something clicked in my head. What the hell? Like it was butter turning into butterfly. Ever since I haven't been eating it. Like, it's so disgusting. I've been eating bugs all along.
Wow.
So, Rachel was asking, have you learned to make any Korean food?
Yes, I can make kimchi jjigae, which is relatively simple, and I've been able to do tteokbokki, but I need more practice with it. So those two I can make. I wouldn't necessarily consider a Korean food, but ramyeon I can easily make.
Very simple. Just give me 1 sec, the alarm's going off. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry about that. So
No
you
problem.
try ramen, and then that's the easy thing to make, but would you be surprised at how common it is for Korean to prepare ramen at home? Like we eat it all the time, right?
Yeah, and it's not just like a lot of times too is they add so many things into it. Like you'll get the ramyeon, like you get the bag and it has all the materials and everything, ingredients you need. But they'll add a whole bunch of like vegetables. You can add cheese, tteok, which is the rice cake, Like there's so many different things you can add. Also, a really cool thing that you can get, you go to the store, and it's called rabokki. So
Rabokki, yeah.
where it's just rabokki. So it's dokkoki, but with ramyeon in it as well. So you have the ramyeon noodles inside with the dokkoki sauce along with the dokkoki. So
Yeah, so good.
it's really good. Yeah.
But it's all carbs. If you say like tteokbokki and ramen, it's only carb based.
Yeah.
Add some eggs in, right?
Yeah, lots and lots of carbs. They usually add an egg or two. So hard-boiled egg or two. So.
Yeah, that's good. So Nikki is asking another question. Do you have any tips for self-studying and self-practicing? You already mentioned about watching dramas, all that, but do you recommend any other thing they can do?
So what helped me a lot, for one, repetition.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of apps out there that I find useful. Like most recently, I was using one called Memrise.
Okay. Yeah.
For basically for vocab words. And so and essentially it's kind of like a game, and well, not necessarily a game, but it shows you, sometimes it shows you the definition and you have to choose the Korean word. Sometimes it shows you the Korean word, you have to choose the definition.
It's like Duolingo, right?
Kind of like Duolingo, yeah. So using apps for vocab is great. And so that you should probably do at least 30 minutes to an hour a day. Just constant repetition of vocab words. Very helpful. For harder things like grammar and stuff, I've been using textbooks, and essentially you practice writing out sentences. So you use the apps to remember the vocab, and then you kind of use books, textbooks to go over the grammar, and you practice making sentences with the grammar. So practice making different sentences, and build your way up from there. So
I think one of the videos I made in this channel, how to improve Korean fast, one of the tips was writing a journal. Like with Julien during the lesson years, I asked him to write a journal. So I was checking how he was forming the sentences, whatnot, right? So it's a good way for you to formulate your thoughts into Korean. And another question, Karida, as a foreigner, was it difficult to make friends?
Actually, not necessarily. In the beginning, it can be because you just kind of feel you're in a new place, and you kind of feel a little bit maybe shy. Well, it also depends on the type of person you are. If you're a really social, outward person, then it won't be a problem at all. You'd be surprised. In fact, one of the popular things that happen, not just in Ulsan, but everywhere, it doesn't matter what city you are, there's a lot of things called language exchange, and they'll have language exchange groups. And so what that is it's groups of Koreans, so it's Koreans organizing events to have both Koreans and foreigners, so that they help each other learn the language. Because there's a lot of Koreans that want to learn English, and one of the best ways is to have a foreigner friend to help with that. And so a lot of friends I met and friends that I made were at language exchanges. And where like you meet people, and then that's when, because you're in a situation where you speak with them. So because you can practice Korean, they can practice English, and then you start learning more about each other. You start hanging out at the language exchange. Maybe you start hanging out outside of that as well. And so in that way, it's actually relatively easy to make friends.
So that was Korean friends. How about like other foreign friends? Like, do you have a lot of other foreign friends?
I have some. So that can vary. It depends what city you're in, where you are. You can make a lot of foreigner friends just as like your coworkers at work. If you work in a big school or in a big hagwon, you might have 4, 5, 6 other foreign teachers with you. You might decide to want to hang out with them. There are some places like foreigner bars, where it's bars that are owned by foreigners, and it's kind of
Wow.
like considered the foreigner hangout. So there's a lot of foreigners that go there to those
Yeah.
kinds of places, and you can meet foreigners there too.
Oh wow. But would you recommend making friends from other countries, or would you strictly stick with Korean friends because you're there to learn Korean?
It depend. Actually, I guess it would depend on you, because so a lot of foreigners that are here, and depending on the city, but a lot of them are teachers. So they're going to be coming from English speaking countries. So Australia, South America, the UK, the US, and Canada are usually the top picks. So if you want to meet people from different places around the world, you're more than welcome to. In Ulsan, for instance, because of the shipping industry, so because of the Hyundai Motors and because of the shipping and the shipbuilding, there's a lot of foreign engineers from different countries that are here too. So you can, and so they are usually only here for a short time, sometimes only a month or two at a time. So they might be interesting to speak with, like if you happen to run into them at a night out, and they might have interesting stories to share. So,
Oh, I see.
but it's
when-
really up to what you want.
Yeah, but when you're hanging out with Korean friends, do you realize maybe they're coming from different culture? Their personality is not what you're used to dealing with back home. Like, is there any situation that, oh my God, they're very direct, or they're even bringing up those topics that here they shy about?
Absolutely, so again, it depends on who you're speaking to. So, I mean, naturally, everyone has their own personalities. Some people are shy, some people are arrogant, some people are boastful. Like, everyone's different. But here, yeah, people aren't necessarily shy to talk about, well, especially talking about situations or issues or problems back in their own country. Because here they are not being watched by people from their nation, so they can pretty much say whatever they want. Whereas with Koreans, I guess it depends where you meet them, and it depends after how much drinking you've done. Some people become
The
a little
level
bit more
of
loose-lipped.
drinking.
Yeah, some people become a little bit more loose-lipped the more they drink.
Oh yeah,
So.
yeah, for sure. Do you go to karaoke, 노래방, all the time?
Oh yes, no, I wouldn't say all the time, but fairly often I go to norebang. I like norebang a lot. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So.
You sing well too when you're drunk. I mean, I'm just kidding. I mean, you sing well in general. So I think Rachel is asking, you might have already answered. I don't know if you answered directly about this question. How do you get over being shy to practice speaking with other people? Because you mentioned that you still kind of shy sometimes. How do you get over it?
Honestly, you do your best to try and just force yourself to do it. That's one thing. Or, sometimes, I won't lie, alcohol does help. For me, I always become a lot more comfortable speaking after I've had a couple drinks myself, personally. But it's one of those things where you kind of just have to push yourself to do it and, live with the consequences. Not be afraid to practice and try. Honestly, one of the biggest fears with me, of course, is the fear of being judged. So if I'm speaking Korean to a Korean, it's that fear of, if I make a mistake, they'll look down on me, puny foreigner, you can't speak our language. That is not the case at all. They are actually so thankful and so appreciative of the effort you're putting in just to learn to speak their language, because they understand how hard their language is. And so for a foreigner to even if it's a one sentence or a few sentences that even the fact they're able to say that will impress them, and they won't look down on you. In fact, they will be a lot more appreciative than if you didn't speak at all. So,
in order to overcome fear, face the fear. There's the saying, right? Just face it.
pretty much, just face it and do it. Yeah.
This is a good question. I also had it on my paper. What's the biggest life lesson that you had during these years of staying in South Korea?
The biggest life lesson? Is, that's a good one. Learning the value of community. So in Canada and in North America, we tend to think more as an individual. We think, oh, it's all about me, my, and I'm the most important person in life right now, so I'm first, everyone else is second. Whereas here in Korea, that's completely different. Here, the focus is on the whole community, the whole group, as opposed to, yes, individual success is praised, but it's a group mentality. And I've seen so many examples of that. Actually, one of the biggest examples is what's happening now around the world with the whole COVID-19 thing. There's many reasons why South Korea has tackled it the way they have. But one of the big reasons is everyone here pulls together, and everyone here follows. So they all follow the rules. The government says this, they do this. It's all about the collective success, not so much the success of one person overcoming this. It's everyone together overcoming it. And so that was one of the biggest eye-openers for me coming here on this side of the world. There's such a huge focus on the group and how much of a benefit that can be to yourself and to everyone that's part of the group as well. So
I agree with you, because I talk to my mom almost every day because I have more time being locked down, right? So she would ask me, make sure you wear a mask anywhere you go outside and things like that. And she asked me, doesn't everybody wear masks over there? And I said, 90% people don't wear a mask here. Like if I go wearing mask, like I'm the one of like few people. And that's gotta change. If only one person follows the order, it's not gonna really help the society, like you said. And she would tell me that if 1% of people who doesn't wear mask on the street in South Korea, people are looked down on them. Like, why are you being selfish? You have to not only taking care of you and also other people. It's a group mentality, like you said.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned is just how important and how powerful that idea of group mentality can be compared to the individual, just individual. So.
Yeah, I like that. So when you talk to your parents who are still in Canada, right? Do they ever tell you, "Oh, Julian, you have changed over time. Like you're almost Korean"? Do they ever say that?
No, I don't think they've ever. They haven't really said that. I'm still me. The only thing that I guess would change would be like, oh wow, you lost weight. Would probably be the only thing. No, I wouldn't necessarily say. They haven't said that. Oh no, you're so Korean now. You think Korean all about and this kind of thing. I wouldn't necessarily say that. No,
Okay.
they haven't said that.
So what are the plans going forward now? You've been there for 3 years, like 2 years more than you expected. What's your plan?
Well, I didn't know when I first came here. I didn't know how long I was going to be. I figured I would be longer than 1 year because I really like it here and wanted to stay. Right now, my current plan is I'm taking, as I said, I'm taking actual lessons now. So Korean lessons now that I have the time to do it. But what's cool is these lessons are free and they're sponsored by the government. Part of the government immigration program.
Wow.
And so my goal is to move through this program, essentially graduate from this program, which will allow me to get a more longer-term visa, which then lets me do anything. Right now, I'm limited. The only visa I'm limited to is essentially to teach English as a foreign language.
Okay.
But once I basically increase my Korean proficiency and graduate this program, I'll be eligible for a more long kind of, I guess the closest equivalent would be like permanent residency almost.
Really? Wow.
But it's not necessarily permanent resident. It's just more long-term resident.
But still, you'll be able to work and study, you know?
I would be able to then work any job I'd like. I would be able to I'd have no restrictions going to school and doing that kind of thing.
Because I remember that was your sort of the plan too. I mean, I don't know if it ever changed. When you're living in Canada, you just graduated from 4-year engineering degree, which is really freaking good and tough to do. It's computer engineering. And you say, oh, I want to improve my Korean so that you can work for a technology company in South Korea. Is that still the plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's still kind of on my radar. And so getting that new visa would open those doors. I would then be able to apply. I wouldn't have a problem applying to these jobs because I would have the proficiency, I'd have the Korean proficiency to get through like the interview process. And at the same time, the company doesn't have to worry about sponsoring and issuing a visa because I would already have it.
Wow. That's impressive, Julien. So I have a couple more questions and we're almost done. What is one thing that you would have done differently if you were to do it again?
One thing I would have done differently, probably try to get my own house sooner.
Oh yeah?
So actually, I recently moved into a new house, and the contract and everything is under my name. So I have it. It's all me. It's owned by me. So I pay the rent. I pay everything. In a lot of cases, so if you come over here and you work for, like, say, work for Hagwon or for a school, the school or the Hagwon pays for your housing, and you get that. No, like they'll pay for your housing, and you get that, but it's all under their name.
Yeah.
So if once you finish the contract, you lose the house.
Yeah.
And then you have to either, you stay at the same place and you renew your contract with them, and you can stay in the same house, or you find another place to work at, and then essentially they put you into a different house, and so then sometimes that can become a headache depending on what your future plans are. And so I wish I had done that sooner, because the sense of relief that I have right now from having my own place that is not linked to my job.
Yeah.
So it means that if I were to suddenly lose my job for whatever reason, at least I have a house that I can stay in. Whereas those who are like their house is connected to their job, if they lose their job, they lose their house, and then there's nowhere where they can go.
Wow.
So I wish I would have gotten my own house sooner.
I see. So you have some kind of peace in mind, it's like relief and freedom.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty much.
So this is the last question. We're almost at more than an hour. What kind of final advice would you give to the viewers for living in South Korea and learning Korean as a student? Just final advice.
Final advice. So for one, don't be afraid to speak to other Koreans. They will be really, really receptive, and you'd be surprised sometimes just how willing they are to help you improve. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid as well to branch out into language exchange groups. So if you move here, so when you move here, depending what city, no matter what city you move to, start searching like Facebook, or start searching for language exchange groups. And so that can help you in many different ways. So not only learning the language, but also kind of help you adapt more to the lifestyle here, because a lot of the Koreans that go to that will have some level of English. They'll have some level of English proficiency, so they can also better tell you, well, what's life like here, and they can maybe help you, show you around the city a bit. So
yeah.
And just as well, be mindful that you are in a different country. So, and that has a different culture and a different kind of mindset. So as well, be careful with some of the things that you think about. Well, I shouldn't say think about, but just be mindful of the things that you may say. Because also, yes, many people here may not speak English, but don't assume that nobody speaks English. Just like my story on the bus, where the Korean girls were talking about me in Korean, and I was able to understand what they were saying. You might be surprised. Some people may be able to understand the conversation you're having in English. So be mindful of the people around you, and have your conversation, your topics of conversations accordingly. So, and just have fun. Have fun with it. Be prepared to have fun. There's a lot of different ways to have fun here. There's norebang. So if you like karaoke, they're here everywhere. If you enjoy coffee, there's cafes everywhere. If you like PC gaming, there's what's called PC buying everywhere. PC rooms all over the place. And they're really cheap.
How much would you say? No?
For what? For PC buying?
Yeah.
Or? It's essentially like $1 an hour almost, or almost like 50 cents an hour. It's really, really cheap. And so there's just a lot of different fun things that you can do here that you can't necessarily do back home in Canada. So take full advantage of that as well.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much, Julien, for making the time for the viewers. I hope you guys learned a lot from Julien, and try to remember what he told you so that you don't repeat the same mistakes, and all the wisdoms. We appreciate you, and it was really good seeing you, Julien.
Good seeing you too. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope to do it again.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, take care.
All right, you too.
안녕.
All right, 안녕.
How do I get out?
You can. I'm sure you can leave somewhere. Or I can just I can end the meeting if you like. I'll just end the meeting.